That is true, but that's okay. These are things one has to live with. जी, जी.
Good morning. Good morning. It is still morning. Right, right. But have we been able to communicate to everybody else?
It's all because of Anupam. She told us that the network is not working for everyone. There's a Zoom link. That's why we could find out.
Good morning, Professor Biswas, Kulwant Singh.
Hello, Kulwant. Good to see you again.
Yes,
You are looking
pleasure.
good. You are
Such a
looking
pleasure.
good. You are looking good in spite of the problems we are hearing India is
Well,
facing right now. Everything fine with you and your family?
Yeah, everybody is fine actually. Everybody is okay. Yes. Good morning, Majumdar ji.
Good morning.
Hello,
Yes.
Dr. Majumdar. Nice to meet you on the
Hello.
web at least.
Good morning. Very nice to meet with you.
My pleasure. So
No,
where are you now, Dr. Majumdar?
Sorry?
Where are you located now?
Well, in Delhi.
In Delhi.
In Delhi.
In Delhi. And how is the COVID situation in Delhi? From the newspapers,
it was pretty bad, but then now it has improved quite a bit. But of course, let us see what happens with the gradual opening of the lockdown.
Okay.
Because often people don't believe that the COVID appropriate behavior is.
Yes.
They think it is just like many.
Meeting.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
The time is already there. We can really start. Can we start? No, that is fine. I'm just saying, I sent you, sort of yesterday, last night, I sent you those slides for each person. Did you see that? कल मैं actually ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਰਾਤੀ ਭੇਜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਚ ਪਹਿਲੀ slide ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ that is for just a general slide on the day and then each speaker वाली slide. Do you remember it? नहीं देखी नहीं हो मेरा ख्याल देख नहीं पाए कोई नहीं ठीक है हाँ नहीं but I am saying एक बड़ी चलो anyway तुसी कीती हुई है ठीक है that's fine that's also fine How many? 14. 1-4 you said. Excellent. Very nice. Excellent. Very good. Okay, that's fine. Thank you so much indeed. Okay. Thank you so much indeed. To permit, I have the permission to start. Excellencies, distinguished speakers, panelists, participants, friends, ladies and gentlemen, we are celebrating World Environment Day today. 5 decades ago, in the year 1972, the UN General Assembly established World Environment Day on the first day of the Stockholm Conference on the Human Environment. 2 years later, in 1974, the first World Environment Day was held with the theme Only One Earth. The World Environment Day held each year on June 5 is one of the principal vehicles through which the United Nations stimulates worldwide awareness of the environment and enhances political attention and action. The key objective is to promote ways to improve the Earth's environment. The theme for World Environment Day 2021 is ecosystem restoration. It's a very special day today, as United Nations is also launching today the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. To celebrate World Environment Day, the Institute for Spatial Planning and Environment Research has joined hands with the 3R Waste Foundation and All India Institute of Local Self-Government and UNCRD Japan to organize this webinar on the theme 3R and Circular Economy for Restoring Ecosystem and Achieving Clean Water, Clean Land, and Clean Air. This webinar is also a pre-event of the United Nations Center for Regional Development's 11th 3R and Circular Economy Forum 2021, which is scheduled later this year in Moscow. The theme of the webinar and its objective is most relevant in the context of our collective efforts towards achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its indivisible, coherent, and integrated set of sustainable development goals. I would like to first briefly request our host, Shri Kamar Surjit Singh, Secretary General of ISPER, for his welcome address, explaining briefly the objectives of the webinar. And followed by that, we will have all the distinguished speakers, beginning with Professor Asit Biswas, the distinguished professor from Glasgow University, Professor Surjit Singh.
With Mr. Biswas, and we will.
Okay, all right. Yeah, but basically, I think let's first have the keynote and then we take it. Yes, it is visible, yes. Well, I have the pleasure and honor of inviting Professor Asit Biswas, academician and distinguished visiting professor, University of Glasgow, Director, Water Management International Limited, Singapore, Chief Executive, Third World Center for Water Management, Mexico. Professor Biswas is a very distinguished visiting professor in the university. He was also a member of the Global Agenda Council of the World Economic Forum and is currently member of the International Advisory Board. Pickett Asset Management, Geneva, member of the Advisory Board, Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, and Strategic Advisor, Singapore International Water Week. We are really honored to have him and request him for delivering his keynote address. We are a little behind schedule, but I think we should be able to catch up our time. Professor Biswas, the floor is yours, sir.
Somebody has muted me.
Kindly unmute Professor Biswas, please. Friends, kindly unmute Professor Biswas. But you are audible, sir. Actually,
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Thank you very much.
This meeting is being recorded. The recording has stopped.
Kindly continue.
Yes.
This meeting is being recorded.
I'm being interrupted by saying recording in progress. Okay. So thank you for inviting me to this meeting. It's a pleasure to be with you. It's a very auspicious day. And I remember in 1972 and 1974, both the meeting at Stockholm and the 74 when I was as the Chief Scientific Advisor to the Executive Director of UNEP. We've come a long way since then. But today, I'd like to share with you some of my views on where we are, where we need to go, and what we should do. First, the idea of 3R and circular economy, individually they're still valid, but I would like to submit to you that we need to rethink this philosophy. They are not enough. When UNCRD came with this idea of 3R and circular economy, there's no question in my mind it was well ahead of its time. But the world has moved on. There have been new developments, both in science, technology, knowledge, our understanding of the global issues of environment and development. And what is more important is what COVID-19 has done to the whole world. We are going to see radical changes. So I'd like to submit to you a few things based on our discussions and thinking of these recent times. We need to go now beyond 3R and circular economy. And I will explain to you why, primarily looking at water, wastewater, and energy viewpoint. And let me share with you why I do not see that this is 3R and circular economy is not enough. There's essential components still of an arsenal of instruments we have, but increasingly we need to go well beyond that. Now let me take water and wastewater as an issue in terms of 3R and why we need to go well beyond. Let's consider India. When we say 3R and the Indian water use, the first thing the fundamental question we need to ask is, why does Government of India needs 130 liters per person per day as the norm of water to be provided? On what basis this 130 liters was done or decided? I have asked this question to many people and my Indian colleagues and the Ministry of Urban Affairs. Nobody has an answer. I would submit to you, we need to ask a very fundamental question before we deciding such norm, how much water we need to provide. The question we should be asking is, how much water does the average Indian need to lead a healthy and productive life? If you ask this question, you'll find out that not only in India, but globally, we have not even asked this question, let alone answer it. only country that has ever done any study looking at how much water does an average citizen need to lead a healthy and productive life was done in Singapore between 1960 and 1970. And they looked at water, provision of water, how much water is needed, impact on health, impact on hospital visit, doctor's visit. And after 10-year study, Singapore came to the conclusion that to lead a productive and healthy life, an average Singaporean needs 75 liters per capita per day. Anything more than that is aesthetic, personal choice, but it has absolutely no impact on health. Now, I have been looking at what is the situation globally. If we look at globally, surprisingly, not surprisingly, many of the West European cities are now already coming near 75 liters per capita per day, and they have not had any health problem. For example, several cities in Belgium, Spain, the per capita water use now in Belgium, many of the cities now are about 75 liters per capita per day. In Spain, they're well below 100 liters and they have been falling steadily, and it has not had any effect on the health or the well-being of the people. England and Wales water regulator last year recommended that all the water utilities of England and Wales by 2050 should reduce their per capita water consumption by half, which means current consumption is 141 liters. They want it to reduce by half. So basically it will reduce by 71. Now the question then comes, why does government of India has this artificial restriction of 130 liters per capita per day, which it is not being able to provide in most parts of the world? And surprisingly, I had a discussion during the Singapore International Water Week about 3-4 years ago. And the Mumbai's IS officer in charge of development, they said Mumbai wants to go beyond 130 liters per capita per day. And when I challenged him why, because he said, we have the water and we can provide it. Surprisingly, that is not the way to go. Now, if you reduce your water consumption and it does not have any health impact, or it does not stop your leading a productive life, what are the benefits? Benefits are many. Nearly 80 to 85% of water of any household becomes wastewater. If we reduce the water consumption per capita, then less wastewater is produced. So in order to reduce water consumption, we need to start with some of the rules and regulations as to why do we have current norms and what is the basis of it. So that is the first question I have in terms of reductions, that we need to look at very carefully the norms and decide how much water an Indian needs or a Japanese needs to live a healthy and productive life. And whatever be that number, that should be the norm. And I suspect that will be significantly less. Some of my colleagues from India say Europe is not comparable to India because the temperature in India is high. My answer to that is I lived several years in Zaragoza in Spain, and the average summer average summer temperature in Zaragoza, even by 8 o'clock at 8 o'clock in the evening, is about 42, 43 degrees Celsius. So it is not unlike to many of the Indian cities in terms of temperature. And the fact that somebody saying that in Delhi you need 3 baths, whereas the European need 1 shower a day, that is not true. So we need to start looking at how much water is needed. So that is my first point. Second point I would like to come with you is why 3R is not catching is not going to catch what we want to do in the world now. The fact we are now finding out wastewater is a tremendous source of energy. And we could get a lot of energy from wastewater. Let me share with you some of the things that are happening in the world in terms of wastewater. Mining energy from wastewater. The city of Aarhus, which is the second largest city in Denmark, now mines enough energy out of wastewater so that all the energy needed to treat the wastewater is provided by this mining of energy from the wastewater. After that, after treating the wastewater and using the energy, it is left with 55% excess energy, which is now selling it to the grid. So the wastewater treatment not only produces energy, but it has allowed the Aarhus municipality to be not only self-sufficient to the energy, but the whole water use for the energy and wastewater sector is they're producing more energy than the water and the wastewater needs, and that adds to the benefit of Aarhus. Northumbrian Water in England is producing more than enough energy right now to meet all its energy needs for wastewater. The problem I see in countries like India, unfortunately, this type of thinking is not there. Wastewater is a source of, is a resource. It's a source of energy. And let me give you an example in Singapore, what we were doing. About 2 years ago, Singapore government has started. Singapore government started an experiment to see how much energy can we extract from wastewater. And they are now, this 2-year experiment is now continuing. And what we are doing in this experiment is we are, in order to increase energy from the wastewater, we are adding food waste, which would have otherwise gone to the garbage dump. We are adding food waste to the wastewater to increase its energy component. And this will continue for 1 year more, but the initial studies, initial results indicate that adding food waste to the energy is going to add significantly to energy sufficiency of Singapore and add to energy generation. Singapore imports all its energy, so wastewater plus using food waste to increase fermentation is going to add to its little bit to its energy self-sufficiency. So we need to start thinking about holistically as to how we can look at water and wastewater. So we not only need to start thinking about how much water we need, but we need to revolutionize this way that the average person from Delhi does not need to use 130 liters if that person gets that regularly. But what we need to make sure is that person gets good quality water on a regular basis. So much broader than what we have been looking in the past. And if we do so, then also add electricity to the grid, becoming the self-sufficient. So we need to broaden our views to how do we manage water, food, and energy so that countries become more self-sufficient through a more circular economy. But I would like to suggest that we look beyond that, not only water or wastewater, but we consider how we can increase the energy production of the wastewater by what Singapore has started to do now by adding food waste to the wastewater to increase its energy component. And we start looking at water, energy, health, more much a broader context than simply water and wastewater in a circular economy. And my suggestion is, and I'm convinced that this is now the way the world is going to go. How do we mine the energy from the wastewater? How do we make our water, wastewater a resource? In Singapore now, all the wastewater is collected, treated, and reused. And in fact, the quality of wastewater, treated wastewater in Singapore is better than the tap water. And the Singaporeans, being very, very clever people, what they decided is it will be a wastage of good clean water to be mixed with the water supply system because its quality is so good. And Singapore has a major wafer industry for which they need very high quality water. So this wafer industry used to take Singapore's normal tap water, then treat it and make it more purer for the wafer industry to function. So what Singapore government has done is they went to the wafer manufacturers and they said, we will give you treated wastewater, but you will have to pay more than the domestic water. But the advantage you will have is your cost will be still less because you don't have to treat it to a high degree for your wafer manufacturing process. It will be less than what you are paying now, what we are spending now. And so most of the treated wastewater is now going to the wafer manufacturing industry. About 90% of it is going to the wafer manufacturing industry, and about 10% is dumped, is now treated wastewater is used in added straight to the reservoir. So the wastewater has now become a major resource for developing energy not in many parts of the world. And we need to start thinking about, in a World Environment Day and even CRD, how do we marry water, food waste, energy, so that we truly have a circular economy and not consider circular economy only in terms of water and wastewater. And the other interesting thing Singapore has done is we don't talk about treated wastewater anymore because there is some public resistance to it. So you won't find in Singapore any reference to treated wastewater. We call it new water because the water is treated and it is almost new and the quality is even better than that. So the terminology we have been using in Singapore for many years is new water, and people have no difficulty. For example, if you go to when the Singaporeans go to the Singapore National Day on 9th of July,
and also contribute to low carbon, about the carbon neutral society. And the next one is the upscaling. And upscaling is like to recreate the reuse of the waste, and which is transforming the byproducts. And like instead of sending to the landfill, so we are creating the value of the product, which is the quality with the environmental value. And when we think about the circular economy, we have to think about the rethinking process, how we can go with the rethinking process. And maybe you know about the butterfly diagram from the Alan Mott author, which is mainly discuss about the circular economy. So I extract from that, which mainly in the 2 points in this diagram, which is the flow of the material and with the components in the biological components and technical components. So in biological component part, it only goes with the product which is naturally derived in the environment, like the biomass. And the technical part is like which is cannot re-enter the environment easily, and like plastic, metals, this is going to be recycled process. So these two elements is more important thinking with the circular economy, and we have to separate these like one fin wings of the butterfly and the second wings of the butterfly, like that. So both when they interact, so it builds a long-term resilience and generate business and economic opportunities, and also provide environmental and social benefits. Then when we talk about the two sectors, so we can see there are 4 loops is connected. The first from the positive value to negative value. So from the positive value, it goes with the repair and maintenance sector and reuse, but in the negative value, it goes with the upscaling and remanufacturing, which can regenerate the restore and regenerate the design, as well as it gives the highest value to the product. So in circular economy, when we transition from recycling economy to circular economy, the first phase is have to design the product in an economical way, which can include the material selections and standard component, how we can facilitate these sectors. And the second is business models, like new business models, which we can replace the existing product. So we don't need to start from the beginning. So existing product, we have to replace and existing the new one. And the third circle is the reverse circle. In reverse circle is like final return the product to the soil or the back in the industrial production process, like an industrial symbiosis method. And the fourth one is about the enabler system conditions, which definitely have the access to the finance and partnership sector. And the next is the beneficial products, various ways the benefit is of the circular economy. First is like economic benefits. And in economic benefits, there are, we can see the economic growth and growth of employment and demand is changing. And in the second sector, we have the environmental benefits. In environmental benefits is a less greenhouse gas emissions, and it definitely conserve our nature resources. And when we talk about the plastics in water, even in we talk about the wastewater or river water, they have oceans, they have more plastics than the fishes. And this study is conducted by Jack Brett author, and they said that the 8 million tons of the discarded plastics ends in the ocean. And in the future, in 2050, they are expecting more plastics then the is going in this ratio 1.3 to goes to less than 1.1. So we have to strategize the plastic economy as well. So the transition of plastic economy is the 3 sectors is the vision of the plastic economy. The first sector is about the innovative, like redesign the product, we have to innovate and reuse the product. Second is about the economical attractive options. And the third one is the recycling pay, where we all improve the packaging of the designing in the recycling stage, and nothing will go to the landfill. So all waste, all the plastics is profitable for the another user. So in Japan, they have plastic strategy with the 3R and renewable energy. In this, they have the 3R plus renewable. So the first step is like a reduce, where they can reduce the single use of plastic. And the second is like recycle, where there is effective collection and recycling of plastic resources and development of domestic resource circulation process. And the last one is recycled plastics, also the bioplastics, where technical innovation is needed, and definitely government procurement or partnership with the private sector is very important in this point. So when we talk about the circular economy, and now we learned about the industry 4.0. So how we can know this is a connection with the industry 4.0? So industry 4.0 is artificial intelligence, which is the one of the enabler for the circular economy. So this enabler have the 4 main areas with the impact of the applications. So it's an essential role to enable the circular economy system shift. So the first design is redesign the product and the material. And the second is operate the circular business models with the innovative technologies and enable the innovative improved models. And the last one is the traceable and detectable sector. So with the artificial intelligence as an act as enabler, so we can use this with the circular economy and we can identify our sectors. Like, for example, the first one is AI for waste bins. Like when we sort the there is a waste bin with the AI solutions. So it identify and sorted the compressed waste. And in agriculture sector, it helps in data of weather, fertilizers, pests, pesticides, and harvesting sectors with the satellite. So we can maximize the use of the farmland and resources as well. And the third point is about for the transport sharing, where the matching the vehicles with the type of demand and optimizing their price and route as well. So the fourth one is about the renewable energy, which helps to energy production with the green energy as well. So in our forum, like Professor Biswas said about the UNCRD is doing in Indore. So let me talk about that part first before to the background. So we have 3R forums. So in our 3R forum we are doing this since 2009. That is our first forum in Tokyo, where we produce the state of Tokyo's 3R statement. And the second forum was in Malaysia, and the Singapore forum was held in 2011 with Singapore recommendations. The fourth one, this forum was really very important because we made the Vietnam 3R declaration, and this declaration from the 2013 to 2023. And this declaration have 33 goals, which goals are very related with the SDG goals. Now we are talking about SDG goals. So these declarations, we have monitor our progress, checking with the country's development. So the fourth was in Surabaya. And Surabaya 3R declaration was on the partnerships declaration, and the sixth is Maldives. So Maldives declaration was based on the tourism part, so that all tourists resorts can sign that declarations. And the seventh one, we talked about the circular economy. In Maldives, we had one session discussion about the circular economy, but in seventh forum, we have the declaration on circular economy. In that declaration is like all participating countries adopted that declaration, so we can step ahead beyond than 3R as the first step. And the eighth one is about the Indore 3R declaration, which is very much related to the today's theme. So I'm going to put the detail of this declaration in the next slides. And the ninth one was based on the plastics when related waste pollution through the 3R and circular economy. And last year we had online webinar because of the COVID situation. And this year we are planning maybe in the last quarter of the year in Russia or hybrid, something like that. So in this forums, we have all these declarations was adopted by the government sectors and the private sectors, but the government sector we can they are maintaining the progress like every year. So we have receiving every year report. And in last year, we had launched the book based on the plastics waste, state of the plastic waste in Asia and the Pacific. So the content of the book was based on the concept of the DPSIR, that is driving force, pressure, state, impact, and response. And then we discussed about the material cycle of plastics and state of plastic waste. And the last is plastic waste and pollution. This is all around in Asia Pacific region, and it was supported by Ministry of Environment, Japan. So in Indore 3R declaration, there are 11 steps. The first step is about the accelerate the movement of the solid waste management. And the second step is to implement at the local level. And the third step is the foster with a sustainable development set practices. And fourth is inspire the ownership for the managing the waste from the household to industry sector. And the fifth one is the partnership with the civil society organizations and leverage with the current collaboration for the promotion of the 3R. And strive the complete ban of illegal disposal of plastics. And the eighth one is undertaking the work towards a sound and effective and sustainable waste water management as well. And ninth one about the new stream wastewater like plastic or lithium ion batteries, so new emergent waste streams. And the 10th one is to promote the emerging technologies, for example, artificial intelligence technologies. The 11th one is about the stakeholder partnership. So in this whole 11 steps is now all like cities of the India, mostly 46 mayors, they have signed that declaration. So where they can adopt as a voluntary. So we are hoping they are doing really well on this step, because maybe in next 5 years, we will ask them about what is the progress they are making on it. So mainly this declaration is about the circular economic development and resource efficiency. So this is very open declaration. So we have signed by the mayors in every year, like last year in Thailand, 2 years ago in Thailand, 6 mayors signed that declaration as well. So this circular economy and AI is the enabler for circular economy, but circular economy is act as a toolbox, I think, to achieve the number of the SDG goals. So because SDG goals is the blueprint to achieve better and more sustainable future. And circular economy is about the local and national roles. So circular SDG is strongly and directly benefiting for the from circular economy practices. And SDG is also indirectly benefiting from circular economy practices. So adoption of circular economy practices will achieve that all SDGs, not targets. So next, there is a one slide I think it's better to show about the circular economy sector in the post-COVID recovery. So in this situation, like we are doing online meetings, so I think we should think about the 4 main steps to recovery part area. So one is the regenerate, that is shift of the renewable energy. And the second is optimize, so the efficiency is most important. And the third one is the loop, the remanufacture and the recycle that product instead of using the raw material for the new product. And the last one is exchange method, that is old with the advanced non-renewable energies. So I think in this situation, people are changing their mind towards the environment. So they are thinking more about environment. So because we are all responsible on our planet, so how we can control and manage our all green parts, all ecosystem restoration. So rethinking the system is underpinning the economy, which is not linear and not recycling only. So move towards a circular economy. So this event is the pre-event of our forum. So I'm inviting you all. So please join our forum. So I hope feel free to keep in touch. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anupam. That was really very nice. Highlighting why circular economy is so important. But much more interesting was the role of artificial intelligence coming up now. actually, and very particularly the way you have beautifully highlighted post-COVID-19 recovery. That is so very essential, basically that. So I think I would only like to mention for the participants that all that she has mentioned about the various declarations, they are all there on the website of UNCRD and can be viewed. But very interestingly, the subject is so very interesting because it is certainly giving you a lot of benefits, both economic as well as environmental. And I think we really need to, look into all that, particularly on a day which is an environment day, and how do we really ensure that. I think I like to take this opportunity to move on and invite our next very distinguished speaker, Professor Sunil Herat. Is from Griffith University, Brisbane, Australia, professor in waste management and circular economy. And he is also the program director of the Master of Environment and Pollution Control. He is actually going to talk on the the same subject of 3R, and I think we are looking forward to his presentation. Yeah. There are quite a few questions which have been asked by the participants well in advance, and in fact, I have requested Professor Herat actually to address some of those questions as part of his presentation. Yes. Neilji, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Now, can I share my screen? Or?
Yes, please. Please do that.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Because at the same time as we speak, there is a very high level national committees have been established to set up these action plans for bringing in circularity in various aspects of various streams of waste management. That is both for concern with the liquid waste as well as the solid waste. And I particularly am involved in this wastewater stream. So what has happened so far and how we are thinking about it, and the learnings which we'll be taking from this very educated panel, we'll definitely be putting it into our thing. So kindly I'll go through the presentation, and at the end of it, in case there are certain more inputs which you like to share with me, that will be my privilege. Right. So I'll just put it full screen. Right, I am Rohit Kakkar, like Dr. Kulwant said, I am from the Central Public Health and Environmental Engineering Organization, which is part of this Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. And the background.
Can you put a full screen? Sorry, Rohit. Can you put it a full screen? No, it is actually minimized. Actually, kindly do it.
Let me get back. At this better?
Yeah, this is okay. Better.
Okay. Right. So, so I was saying that we have this figures which are coming up that our population is rapidly urbanizing, and we are likely to reach a total population of around 150 crores, out of which around 80 crores would be urban population by 2050. And there is like we all know that India has got 4% of the water resources and 17% of the world's population, and then there are various competing user groups which are competing for the same limited water resources. At the same time, what we have found that a very substantial quantity of treated as well as untreated municipal wastewater is being discharged unused. What's happening is that cities are drawing on hundreds of kilometers. The larger ones like Bombay and Jodhpur. Jodhpur gets its water from more than 200 kilometers. And after a single use, after the water being supplied to it, potable water being supplied to the town after being made potable, one use and the water has been discarded. So this is wastewater recycle, reuse, and bringing the circularity in this entire effort is a very key development, and it was a key to water economy in future. We have undertaken some studies through literature studies as well as discussions with various experts, and we find that EU has a very credible system which they have developed over the last 20 years, which I'll be just touching in one of my slides, and that acts as a general precedent for us. Obviously, each country and each state in India, because we have this system of 3 levels of governance. So every city is independent to take a decision. But as at a central policy level, we find the EU's these policy documents quite useful. And like I said, that we are already having these in-depth deliberations to develop functional action plans for wastewater recycle and reuse at appropriate level. Next, my previous speakers would also agree with me that there is much more to when we say circularity in waste management, and it has various numbers of hours which start from 3 hours to 6 hours to even 8 hours. Some of these hours are that you reduce it. Professor Biswas spoke very nicely about it, that we should reduce usage of water. So if the water is reduced, the usage gets reduced also, and then the quantity reduces. So then the next element is reclamation. You reclaim this water, which I'll be focusing on, that we have used this water once. Can we reclaim it for a potential secondary usage and then reuse for this non-potable purpose if possible? We can also recycle the water and recover the various elements which form part of wastewater. Some of them can be the recovery elements could be the nutrients, which we already spoken about, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the energy per se from that. So this entire thing and many more hours could form the system of, you could say, the circularity in wastewater management. But our focus so far, after having studied various global developments in the last maybe decade or 2 decades, is that if we can focus on reclamation, reuse, and recycling, most of our effort, this is a kind of the low-hanging fruit, without disturbing our existing, you could say, status of living, the living standards. We can do these things, and also recovery, which is also possible. But these three, the reclamation, the reuse, and recycling, we are finding through our studies are the low-hanging fruit. Next, I just touch upon this. This was not part of my original presentation. Dr. Biswas raised a point about what is the reason for this 135 liters. Definitely, sir, we totally agree with you. There has to be a rethink at it. In 1999, a high-level committee again was set up by the Bureau of Indian Standards, and we came to a figure of around 140. Some studies were subsequently also done, like this study by KSS has done, that obviously that's our general usages coming in from the major cities of this country. And there is definitely scope with the modern equipment, with the low use toilets coming in, with the alternatives to various things. We can look into drawing lesser water for our portable use. But the figure ranges between, say, 70, which we have agreed for some places which are not seaward. So even a person or a household can live with 70 LPCD per day in case you don't have to supply the water for the flushing and the onward discharge into municipal sewers, and it can go up to 135 liters. Our experience of looking at other countries and developed countries especially has been that they are using slightly more than this. 135 is a figure which comes out of England also. They're also using 135. USA definitely uses much more, and then there are various other things. But we are totally with you in case some study can help us to determine what should be the modern standard for use of water. Right. But as it exists at present, we find that almost say 72,000 million liters of day of sewage is generated in this country, in the urban areas of this country, of which around 45 to 50%, because there is some development, fast development taking place through Namami Gange, through our Jal Jeevan mission and the Swachh Bharat mission. So around 50% of that is undergoing treatment at STPs of various levels. There are these regular STPs which are able to give us an assured quality of water, and then there are these hybrid systems, local systems also, which are known as STPs, which also give us reasonably good quality of water. So we can take in around 50% of our total sewage generated is available in a good quality for potential secondary use. And then there are some figures which came in from our economy data that the total water usage for of this country, 85% goes to the agricultural sector, around 8% goes to industry, and around 5 to 7%, depending on various calculations, goes for potable use for both the urban as well as the rural areas. And this trend is to exist till at least till 2050. Second data which comes from this is that out of the sewage generation and the STP's capacity which we have, there are 50% of our wastewater is getting treated on site. Some of it is being collected, the septage is being collected and taken to an appropriate septage treatment facility, and around 500,000 tons of septage is also sludge is available to us. So this is that sludge which you could say is that constitutes the energy component of wastewater after it has been removed from wastewater, the nutrient component of wastewater. So this is that you could say that thing which has been mined out of the wastewater. So 500,000 tons of mined material is also available with us. We have a reasonable number of regulatory frameworks and policies at the national level. We also make use of various relevant international guidelines which come from time to time. I'll not have to read water management. There is a national urban sanitation policy which also reuse 20% of our treated wastewater, and there are service level benchmarks linked to that. There is a national septage policy also in 2007. After the NGT's intervention, even the states have been made very active, and at least I got on my table in my office around 10 level reuse action plans, comprehensive data, 500 to 700 kgs each, which they have been able to see, which are functional at various parts of the country. Being taken for wastewater reuse and recycle in some Indian cities. No, it's not all around, it is not comprehensive. Much more needs to be done. Like some states have come up with their policies, and there are a few successful case studies which I'll be covering in the next few slides. Now, this was what we found was very practical, but then it was also found that it has taken them almost 20 years to come to this stage where we want us to make it come up readily. So this is one thing which we have to see from them. What is happening in Europe, the standards, the reuse criteria, the barriers for use, what kind of water can be used for what purpose. So all those things are very, very well taken, and they are very, very appear to be very practical, and which need to be could be replicated in our country. Then we have also studied the USA's example. Some of the water starved areas of USA, like California, have been having some kind of a sewage application for sewer farms. We also used to have it till around very recently, but now because of the stringent regulations, we are not able to use the sewage which is coming out of the peri-urban areas or out of the small towns readily on the farms which are lying just outside these towns. The US EPA, there's a guideline on wastewater recycle and reuse, and the USA is also we are trying to study, and because it's a very, very recent document, and we are also trying to develop our action plan in the same way. China, and they have been able to bring their wastewater recycle and reuse to a very, very good credible level, and we are also focusing to study these documents. So like this is just my summary that we have no dearth of policies, but there's a clear absence of actionable directives from respective levels, which we are we have learning, and through our action plans, which are going to be released very soon, we will be, I think we'll be on the way to this. Okay. The guiding principles which we have, we are now thinking of is that we will focus on recycle reuse of treated municipal water for secondary non-potable use. The circularity can come, but what is happening? The circularity has got various loops. One of the obvious loop is that I use my water, I treat it to the maximum possible potable level, like Singapore is doing. I remove all the nutrients from that water and put it into the aquifer. I put the water into the aquifer and somebody else draws from the aquifer, it becomes new water. So that is one strategy of looking at it. But there's a cost involved with this entire effort to draw this water, to remove the nutrients from them. Maybe Singapore doesn't have a issue of agricultural secondary use. But outside all my towns, also almost 80% of my towns within a distance of 5 to 10 to 15 kilometers, there are huge agricultural irrigation needs, which are presently drawing the water from the ground. Either the groundwater has been taken, which is consuming a lot of energy because of the pumping, or these canals are being provided from which these people are able to draw water, again using a lot of energy through the mechanism of pumping. So can I supply my secondary, my treated water made to a reasonably good standard and without drawing the nutrient from that, so that this nutrient can be made available for the non-potable agricultural use? So that is our thought. Obviously, the focus on the pathogens and those things, that is very real, and that has to primary safety. There has to be no compromise. So that's why we are saying we will have to develop a hierarchy of reuse on socio-economic basis. So what is the social acceptance? What is the medical acceptance? Vis-a-vis what's the economics? So we can develop a hierarchy of reuse. There could be some areas, some agricultural fields, some industries where this water can go, where the human contact is unlikely. So we have made use of this water for a secondary use before it is actually taken up for further discharge. So we have involved, you could say, reduced or we have involved a practice of circularity of some sort into this system. Then we adopt a risk-based assessment. That is very, very obvious. Risk is, we can't allow human risk to come into this. This is a big issue which is coming up in our country, is the quality standards. When I discuss my requirement with the user ministries, like the agricultural ministry or the industry, they always have this issue about the quality of our wastewater. We say that our quality of wastewater is as is required to come out of a treatment plant. When I say a secondary treatment plant, it will meet the secondary treatment quality. If you can take in this water without asking me to do a tertiary treatment and remove my nutrients, and if the agriculture can use it, there could be a scenario where you could encounter a particular risk due to pathogens or some reason. But if you only use this water for a particular purpose, which is like, or you use some kind of barriers, like in case of COVID, we are using barriers like you're wearing masks, we are maintaining the social distance. So those similar barriers can be there on the agricultural field, that you will not use it for any crop which is to be eaten raw. If the person is working in these fields which are served through treated sewage, he'll be wearing some kind of protective gear. So some kind of economical measures can come in, and you can use this water. Definitely, this awareness of all the stakeholders, be it the agricultural user, various locations where even in the town itself, the water can be reused, including, you could say, that thing is there. So all those people have to be made aware what are the possible benefits and what are the possible risks of this. Okay. Then one point is that yes, definitely we agree that this economy may not work by itself. So some kind of a central or the government incentivization could also be there in the initial years, so that we can start promoting the people's accepting this water. So these are some of the guiding principles with which we are trying to work. These are some data. We are finding that the industry is one of the potential big users. There are huge quantities of water being used in thermal power plants. So now the thermal power plants use most of this water for the cooling purpose and then discard this water. And presently what was happening till very recently is that the thermal power plants were drawing the water from the nearby surface water or from the groundwater. So as a national policy, what we have done is that we are saying that all thermal power plants which are located within a distance of 50 kilometers from an existing sewage treatment plant or a future sewage treatment plant will perforce have to use this treated water. We'll supply you treated water to a reasonably good level, which will not be that we'll remove everything from that water and then supply it to you. Because if that was to be done, I can as well put the water in my environment. I can put the water into my own aquifer, and then I don't have to think about the cost of transportation. So there has to be a you could say a balance between what is the cost of transporting to your site vis-a-vis what is the cost of drawing this extra tertiary treatment or even a fourth level treatment, which is required often for putting the water into the environment. But the thermal power plant has got a huge potential for reusing our water. Some issues and some examples which are already coming of industry use thermal power plants. There are a number of examples in the country. Non-thermal power plants also, some industries, some areas where there's a huge big industry available and the town can supply its most of its treated water to the industry. Would be like there are examples which are coming from Nagpur where they've got this 110 mld of recycled water which goes to a power plant, definitely one big users. Then these industry usages coming up in Madras, in Chennai, where you have these two TTRO, that is the RO level treatment they do, and then they supply 45 mld of treated water to the industry. This definitely the RO water becomes very costly at the point of discharge, but because of it is assured intake by the industry, so some kind of balance has been maintained between the industry, and I think the industry is taking in this water at a very high rate. That is the cost of the water supplied to them is around 50 to 70 rupees per 1,000 liters. So this is working for them. Some issues which we are likely to face with them is the industry as well as the thermal power plants is that now with the zero liquid discharge regime being set up for the industrial belts or the industrial areas, that their wastewater will not move out. So only the new water which is required by them from our municipal water would be the makeup water. Because otherwise they'll try to use their own water. Similarly, in thermal power plants, earlier there were once two plants, you used to use water and discard it. Now, because of the 2015 regulations, the thermal power plants are also being asked to develop their recirculation plants within. So what the water is being given to them for cooling, that gets cooling through cooling towers, it is cooled down and again reused for cooling the next lot. So these are the issues where in future we may have a problem with discharge of our municipal treated water, but at this moment we are in a good space as far as circularity or at least the reuse and recycle of my wastewater is concerned, going to the industries.
But you have to move faster a bit.
Just about finishing, 3 more slides. So agriculture is one big user. Definitely, we try to develop a model for them, and we found that within a 5-kilometer band outside any town, the entire the water which is being used by that town could be used in agriculture. The agriculture can assimilate water. The water need not have to be taken to a far away distance, because most of our urban areas, especially in those special states like which are irrigation intensive or agriculture intensive, like in Haryana, they said around 85 to 90% of their area is covered by is irrigated. So just outside the towns, it is very possible in Haryana to make use of my entire treated wastewater, and it could be supplied to the agricultural fields. And like it has been done in Phagwara, it goes to the fields, and they have laid around 12-kilometer network, which is not much, because in a town like Phagwara or any other town, hundreds of kilometers of water distribution pipeline will already be laid. So this 12 kilometers is not much. In Bangalore, which does not have agricultural fields close by, but they are taking in around 450 mld out of the Bangalore sewage after secondary treated and taking it to some distant area, I think around 140 kilometers, to fill in the tanks in drought-prone areas. So these tanks work for the agricultural requirement of the farmers in these districts. So this is another one. Then definitely the municipal non-potable use has got a lot of potential, which we got good examples coming from various parts of the country. but this becomes a tertiary kind of a use. What I'll just try to finish, because definitely sludge has also got a potential to use in India also. If we compare with the other part of the world, we find that we are in a good space because our utilization rate is also around 80%. And most of it goes for land application. Only problem is that the quality of our sludge is not, we don't have any authority on that. So what is happening, the sludge is being developed, it is being given to the farmers, and the farmers are just taking it and reusing it. But the figures wise, we are not too bad if we say for use of sludge for our system. So just my point was that some of us often say that we can reuse the water at any level, like even for toilet flushing and such other things in small localities also, and some examples are given that we can reuse the water, but the quality, we can definitely do it. On-site reuse is also possible because the present technologies are such that we can treat the water to any level, but the economics may not be very feasible. So what are the examples which we are getting from Europe is that we set up these specialist large-scale plants which take in the water from the urban area, and then based on their the huge capacity, we decide on where this water could be very economically used. Could it be used for agriculture? Could it be used for irrigation, or we use it back and give it back to the town, depending on what are the potential and what is the cost of transportation. So CPHO recently we have developed this kind of a matrix to help, because the decision has to be taken at a city level. We can't decide sitting out here. We can make a policy that X percentage of water should be reused or should be put into circular economy. But this kind of a table or a matrix, decision matrix, if any town can develop, in which all these aspects can be weighed, put a weightage can be provided to them, and then the scores are given by a group of experts, and based on what is the most appropriate out of these four possible usages, that is the industry, municipal, agriculture. And even in the municipal, there are two distinct elements. One is the municipal reuse for various things like toilet flushing, for sweeping the roads, for the gardens, for the small usages, but the quantities are very less. Vis-a-vis the landscaping out on the new developed areas outside the city, that has got a huge potential, which is seen from examples coming out of China. So if we can develop some kind of a weightage-based matrix, and then some scoring pattern can be given, the cities can be, this is what we're thinking of, and the cities are will be advised through our action plan to look into this and decide on their own what kind of usages can be there. There are many actionable aspects which we could have, we could discuss, and I'll just try to point out 3 or 4 of them. That we agree that there is a requirement to establish institutional mechanism at national, state, and city level for wastewater reuse. And when I say reuse, the circularity aspects, elements of circularity which are economical and socially possible, we'll bring into them. And so all these are points which were coming up. But what is very interesting is that we are also suggesting a digital trading platform. We have this water available, and can this be taken in by through a trading platform by the intentional user? He can bid for it, and so these will also be developed at maybe at city level, at least for the larger cities, and so that the treated wastewater becomes a full-fledged part of the economy. We are also proposing stringent regulations for restricting discharge of polluted wastewater into environment, so that more and more wastewater from the towns becomes treated, and no business as usual is allowed, that you just make it through a septic tank and then just discard your water into the open nalas. That has to be made more stringent. But at the same time, we are also requesting for stringent regulations at the state and city level for withdrawing the surface and groundwater, so that if there is a possibility of reuse of this wastewater from within the realms of economy, then the city must take in this wastewater. So this is kind of my summary. At the end, we recognize the need of wastewater reuse and recycle, and the policies are already in place. Detailed guidelines and guidances are needed, for which this matrix will work. Some other documents are also being under development. We don't have common regulatory standards, so we are also requesting the CPCB and the Bureau of Indian Standards to develop the regulatory standards for what should be the quality of water to be used for this purpose, and what could be a monitoring mechanism. So we are looking at the state action plans. Like I said, around 10 states have already delivered their action plans. We're looking at them very closely and their policies, and whatever further strengthening needs to be done. is being contemplated. We were already here. So this was the last summary there. Like I already covered all this. There is a combination, there's a matrix of policies, technology, various things. And based on all these aspects, once we look into this, we can reap the circular benefits out of the circular economy. And finally, I'll just run through these 5-6 slides to just show you that there are some timelines and some aspects which we're already putting in our action plans. You know, they are huge, around 40-50 elements of action which we are discussing with the states and the cities. And so, just to assure you that something is something already happening. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Rohit. I think it was a very comprehensive presentation. Most needed, I would say that we really need to do something on a mission mode within the country, because we are only treating wastewater to the extent of only about 22-23%. And smaller towns do not have the capacities also, very particularly. You know, class 2, class 3, class 4, class 5, class 6. There is no, I would say, that treatment capacities that exist there. We really need to build those capacities also. But I'm very happy the policies are there. May I, as a matter of fact, take the permission of Prarthana if we can have one presentation by, Professor Luthra. He, as a matter of fact, had to skip in between, and he is now available. In that case, I think he will be making a very short presentation. Professor Luthra from Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar. Yes. Are you there, sir? Dr. Ashwini Luthra? आप हैं, आवाज आ रही है, Luthra ji?
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Can you listen to me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir.
Make it short, actually, Luthra ji.
Yes, sir. I know because first of all, my apologies because of weather condition in Amritsar. This network was not working well, and as permitted by the moderator, I'll be making my presentation quick and short. My presentation is on restoration of urban ecosystem in the post-COVID world. And in this light, we know that our cities, they are being developed as artificial environments these days because all the natural environment is disturbed. And we know what kind of urban issues are there. I'm not going into detail right now. So it is in this light that World Environment Day 2021 is set to ecosystem restoration by the United Nations. So this is the ecosystem, natural ecosystem we have, but what we have done over a period of time as urbanites, I would say, this is how the air is polluted, the water bodies are destroyed, and the urban environs, that is also a very disturbed one because of the crowdedness in the settlements. And the pandemic has shown what the human being has done, because the specialists, they say that because of these factors also the pandemic is adding fuel to fire. So we are having urban heat islands, and this is a study done for Dehradun in my institute, where it is seen that how the agricultural land, forest land, even rivers, gardens, open spaces, etc., they are converted into the built-up spaces. So we are consuming the natural environment. How the vehicular densities are increasing, we know the situation of our bigger cities especially. Water bodies are polluted, and this is just a scape of this scenario in our urban settlements. Many of them are from Dehradun itself. Similarly, over ambition of the mankind has resulted into the floods, Kerala floods, Kedarnath floods, and I normally say that if these things are there, then nature takes its possession whenever the point comes. This is the quality of air in our cities, and a report says that 12 out of 15 most polluted cities in the world are in India, and these are the names of those cities. So So this was the World Air Quality Report 2018. So air pollution is a silent killer that is recognized by WHO Global Fact File, and various data figures are there, and they can be seen from the reports as well. And my presentation is with ISPER, and this is a scenario for India where Indian fact file is also not very good, and Delhi has been taken as a case. Now, this is today's scenario when where we are in terms of pandemic. 17.33 crore people are infected over the globe, and 37.27 lakh deaths have occurred. So, this natural ecosystem restoration is from the point of view of pandemic as well, because I was reading somewhere that as the glacier is melting because of climate change, many bacteria are coming up, many viruses are coming out, and they may be affecting our health as well. So this is a scenario of before and after first lockdown. You must have seen through the WhatsApp media or other social media. This is how the pollution over a period of time has gone down due to the lockdown. Now the question is whether we invite lockdowns frequently, and the nature will be taking its toll. So it is in this sense that we need to think, is pandemic an opportunity to learn and experience better urban ecosystems? Because things have changed. Was it an attempt of the natural forces to restore urban ecosystem through pandemic? Now, these are two big questions to me. And this pandemic has resulted in better air quality, cleaner water bodies, better health, restricted land development, regeneration of vegetation, and regeneration of wildlife. This all I have experienced in my university itself, because many of the wildlife species that were not seen since long, because of the lockdown, when human beings were not there, they were there on the roads even. So it is in this sense that I thought of a few suggestions, which is this, that we should go for compact development, because that urban sprawl, haphazard urban sprawl, that is not giving us good thing. And eco-city development approach should be followed. Integrated township, this is Magarpata in Pune, that integrated township will reduce our mobility requirements also, and that way the exposure to pandemic or viruses that can reduce. TOD, of course, is advocated in the sense that we can have more people at one place. Of course, once it comes to the effect of COVID, then maybe smaller containment zones can be there, but still the larger section of the population will be served. So it is in this sense, even this 15-minute city concept is also advocated. Walkable cities and communities is an important parameter here, because pandemic has given that walkability and cyclability has improved, and it is where this walkable cities and communities is an advocacy by this is a suggestion by me, and in fact. Then, of course, green mobility options, we are cycling and walking, and apart from this, other micro mobility options, they should be looked into in the post-COVID world, and a lot of efforts are going on in this direction right now even. Similarly, the biofuel options or green fuel options, they are also in place, and the economies are working on this. Now, this leads to ecosystem restoration, and for this, we need to have urban eco balance, and this normally used as 3R approach, this symbol, but here it is that the interplay of water bodies or cleaner water bodies, rational land use, and cleaner air will lead us to sustainable urban habitat, which is in a way the agenda for World Habitat and World Environment Day as well. Thank you very much. And this was a small, crisp, and faster presentation. Thank you very much for giving me time.
Thank you, Professor Luthra. One would have loved to listen little more on various slides, but I think you presented it so beautifully. I think there is a need for compact city development. There's a need for walkable cities. There's a need for green mobility solutions, no doubt about it. But I think that is mainly if we really want to ensure that our cities are livable much more. You have also set the ground for the next speaker when you said air pollution is a silent killer and our natural ecosystem is affected. And there is no doubt about it. In fact, I have our next speaker, Madam Prarthana Bora. She is the India Director of Clean Air Asia India office. Prarthana is India Director of this Clean Air Asia, which is an international not-for-profit organization headquartered in Manila, working towards better air quality in about 1,000 cities in Asia. I do recall about 15 years ago when I heard about this organization, I was wondering, I think the relevance of that organization at that time. But very soon we really felt actually when we were choking in a city like Delhi that there is a need for addressing the issue of clean air per se. So I'm requesting Prarthana to make her presentation, and she is going to mainly speak on the whole issue of clean air, achieving clean air through a circular economy. Yeah, Prarthana, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and very good afternoon. It's such a pleasure to be in a panel where we have, you have here such important and relevant things, and I'm really, really very thankful, Dr. Singh, for you that you invited me to be part of this panel. And the challenge is actually being the last speaker, and after so many, important and relevant speakers have spoken. So I'll try to restrict my presentation to very specifically to air, and I'll try to be quick because I know that we're running against time. So I'm going to just share my screen for a few slides, which are basically visuals. Okay, can you see my presentation? Is it visible, my presentation? So I work for an organization called Clean Air Asia. We are primarily a not-for-profit, as Dr. Singh said, and we work in 3 areas: air quality and climate change, sustainable urban transportation, low emissions urban development. So it gives me really a lot of pleasure to be talking in a forum where we are discussing waste management as well as circular economy, 3 Rs, because I think one of the least discussed areas is the connection between proper waste management and air pollution, reducing air pollution. So my presentation is primarily about how we have tried to integrate waste management in our work, what are some of the theoretical principles, and of course some of the challenges, because I know previous speakers have spoken a lot in the context of what can be done, but I would like to bring into this floor some of the challenges that we face when we are actually implementing problems and a problem like this, and how do we actually integrate the circular economic concept into the issue of air pollution management. So if you look at this, what I have on my screen is a visual in terms of what are the sources of air pollution. Very simple. It talks about area sources, it talks about stationary sources, and it talks about mobile sources. When we are saying that it talks about area sources, we consider waste management, because area sources includes sources which are small when it comes to when you're talking about specific locations, but it actually adds up to a lot when you look at the multiple locations. So usually what happens is waste management is least discussed, because when you talk about it in the context of a particular city or a particular area, it is considered little, but when you actually add up multiple cities, it's a tremendous source. So especially in the context of India. So I think it's very important for us to understand as a country that waste management is an issue that really needs to be considered, because burning of garbage is one of the primary sources of air pollution. So what is the waste and air connection? I think one of the previous speakers, I think Professor Herath, spoke about the whole issue of how much waste we have today and the projections in terms of where we are going. I mean, we have the same figures, 3.4 billion tons in 2050. But what we also need to consider when we talk about waste management is the issue that effective waste management is expensive. It comprises almost 20 to 50% of the municipal budgets. And in countries like India, most of this municipal budget goes into collection. So we have very little left actually for the management, which is why in low-income countries and in developing countries and in many countries of Asia, 90% of the waste is often disposed as unregulated dumps or openly burned. So our problem is the unregulated dumps as well as the open burning that is happening as far as air pollution is concerned. Now, the other problem as far as solid waste disposal and air pollution is concerned is that we do not have proper data. So when you look at any research or any data that emerges in terms of the relation between solid waste management and air pollution, while you have a category which talks about solid waste, which is urban solid waste, which is garbage burning, you do not really include issues like mining solid waste or agricultural solid waste within that context when you're talking about air pollution and the emission levels. So what happens, that becomes a miscellaneous category. So when you look at the overall emissions vis-a-vis waste management, it is deceptive because it talks of a very small component, that is the urban solid waste, which is the garbage that we are talking about. So this becomes an issue. And because of this, it is very difficult to, while we know that, okay, there is garbage burning and it leads to emissions and it leads to air pollution, which impacts our health. It is very difficult to measure the health exposure from waste management, from burning of waste, vis-a-vis air pollution, which actually makes a case for proper waste management as far as air pollution is concerned. So what is in the emissions? What is actually in the emissions as far as garbage burning is concerned? 40 to 50% is carbon dioxide, and we all know what carbon dioxide contributes to global warming. In terms of the emissions from burning, we have particulate matter, we have mercury and PHS, which are all very harmful to the human body. And you can see that air pollution impacts every part of our human body, right from your cognitive ability to your lungs to multiple parts of your body. Vulnerable communities are impacted, maternal health is impacted, and children are also impacted. Then we of course come to mercury emissions, which is again a very harmful chemical as far as emissions are concerned, and we do not talk enough about it. And of course we have methane and carbon dioxide together, which actually forms the VOCs, which again have a huge health impact. So these, if you look at it, while we talk about air, are actually related to the issue of improper waste management. And this is where I think we need to be concerned, because while we just talk about air pollution and where the emissions, what the emissions are, we do not talk about what are the issues that actually lead to these emissions, and how can we actually reduce the emissions by actually attacking at the source. So is a world without waste possible? And this brings me to my other challenge, where we need to talk about the terminologies when we're actually discussing in a public forum, or when we're actually talking about issues in terms of involving communities. I think it is very important for us to be realistic. And this is where I think we need to be very clear that a world without waste is not possible. And we have to therefore set some targets in terms of what is actually the level of, or the amount of waste that we would consider is enough, so that the world doesn't go through what is happening now. And this is where probably concepts like ecological restoration comes in, because we are now talking about issues like bringing back to the earth what it was earlier. Which brings me to a concept which we are talking, when we talk about the circular economy, I think we need to bring in some design processes. And in design, there is this terminology where we talk about systems design. And systems design is actually about thinking of the world as a whole, making interrelationships and interconnections possible. So this is where probably I think we need to look at nature's design. And I put here in front of you a visual to reflect, where we see that nature doesn't have the concept of design. And if our processes were designed as far as nature's philosophy, I think we would be able to achieve what we consider the circular economy in its real manner. Which brings me to our design. now. And if you can see the differences in the pictures from the first slide and this slide, and this is where the problem is, that in our design process, in our implementation programs, we do not think about the circular aspects. And if you look at the picture on the right, you can see the whole concept of waste. There is so many components and there are so many issues attached to it. How do we deal with each one of these? And how do we find an integrated system which actually connects all of this, so that we do not have the multiple effects that are shown in the diagram below. So why a circular economy? I think this is not something that I need to go back to, because I think everyone has spoken about it. We need to think about the ecological footprint. The global footprint is rising. The circular economy contributes to the SDGs very much, and this was spoken very well by Anupam in the beginning. And of course, we have different solutions. So I move on to my next slide. I want to dwell a bit on citizen engagement, because I think that came up as a question. So there was a study which talks about Delhi as a case, and if you look at the waste generated in Delhi, these are some of the figures. But what is more important and highlighted in orange is the fact that 70% Delhiites are willing to actually participate in the issue of waste management. They do know about segregation. They believe that reusing is better. So the importance of integrating the citizen engagement component in achieving a circular economy is shown by this small research done by a very good NGO in the city, which works on waste management. Going on, I would like to now bring in the policy aspect and why we have different plans. And my previous speaker spoke about integrating a circular economy plan, and there is a waste management plan, and there's a climate plan. But how do we actually bring in these concepts into something into a plan which actually doesn't talk about it? For instance, within the National Clean Air Program, we have the Clean Air Action Plans. Do we even discuss circular economy in this context? And here are some of the steps in terms of how we achieve clean air action. So enhancing understanding. Can we bring in the concept of circular economy? Because waste actually contributes to 30 to 40% if you look at the Indian city structure. I mean, different for different cities, of course, but if you look at an overall, it's one of the biggest factors, and it is a factor that can be addressed because waste management is a prerogative of the local cities, and they can actually take action. So reducing exposure, my slide which talked about what are the pollutants that are actually coming out of air of waste burning, and how do we actually discuss about this and integrate it? Mitigation actions. We do have a clean air action plan. We talk about waste management, we talk about recycling, we talk about collection, proper collection, but we do not use a word like circular economy, which actually connects it to the overall framework. And finally, in action development, can we look at processes which actually integrate these principles so that the connection between air and waste management comes out more in front, and we have a capacity to mainstream air quality within the context of in the context of waste management and the circular economy. I stop here now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prarthana. I think you highlighted the nature's design, which is so very important to address the whole issue of clean air, mentioning about economic footprint. Citizen engagement is so very important. We really need to understand citizens are now getting much more cautious, conscious. You have rightly said that large number of them are trying to really think in terms of doing the kind of composting themselves and all. And the need for national clean air program. More than the national clean air program, I also feel there is a need for clean air program at a decentralized level, city level, basically. And in fact, some of these elements should really become part of, I would call it, cities' master plans themselves. Basically, as you make a master plan for the city, which today covers only the land as an important element, I would say that master plan should also cover both water and air. But I think it's an issue that needs to be discussed. I have a last speaker. I would say that he is the Bhisham Pitama of solid waste management. Dr. N.B. Mojumdar, who's presently the chairman of the International Academy of Environmental Sanitation and Public Health at New Delhi, was the chairperson of the committee that, as a matter of fact, made the report for having the 2016 laws, which were really, which were 2016 rules on municipal solid waste management, under whose chairmanship the committee really worked and gave a very comprehensive, comprehensive report, and the rules were really framed under that. But much more than that, I would say that Dr. Mojumdar has a more than 4 decades of long experience of working in this world of waste management. Basically, not only just looking at the issue, but also on the recycling. I think his, I would say, bio is too long. I will not like to go through that, but the details will become available to all of you as we really share his presentation later on. Basically, I would like the floor for Dr. Mojumdar. Of course, we are already extremely late, but I'm sure that he will stick to the time. Kindly. Floor is yours, Dr. Mojumdar.
Good afternoon. Will the presentation be presented from the organizer side?
I think our guest can really help sharing.
If possible, please get it done. So Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thanks to Dr. Singh, my old friend and my old colleague also. So it's a great pleasure to be here. And it's a greater pleasure because I had the pleasure of listening to experts, great experts, and great experts with a lot of experience and knowledge, not only of a particular country, but worldwide. So now, as soon as my presentation comes in, I will start. But meanwhile, I have, we have had a lot of presentations which were very informative and educative and rather heavy. As a last speaker, I will go with a very small or rather light set of slides because in my mind, I had initially, or right from the beginning, I had thought of 10 minutes, which was the time given to me by Dr. Singh. So in 10 minutes, I will have a very small presentation, but there would be, some punches from the real life, punches from the ground situation. So that's what it is.
May I request my team members kindly put up the presentation and share the screen for Dr. Mojumdar, please.
हेलो
Yes, kindly share this
presentation हमारे पास रिसीव नहीं हुई है
presentation अभी आपके पास है.
Okay.
So yes, share it, then anyway
मैं शेयर कर देता हूँ सबके साथ.
Screen share कर दीजिए. Yeah. Thank you. That's very nice. Actually, we can see your screen, Dr. Mojumdar.
Yeah, but
yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So good afternoon again. I'll be very quick, but a little punchy. I beg your pardon from all of you. Now, in this presentation, I shall try to highlight the practical aspects of 3R and not prescriptive or theoretical aspects. We have heard a lot of issues about 3R from across the world. Now, in the last more than a decade, 3R and 4R have steadily gained importance. A lot has been spoken and written about it. Reduce, reuse, and recycle have been advocated along with the addition of recover or restore. Now, in the manual that we had prepared, Municipal Solid Waste Manual, we tried to make it a little more practical by, categorizing the hierarchy like this. Number one, at source reduction, then reuse, at source reduction and reuse, recycling, composting, waste to energy, and finally landfill. So the ultimate waste or a waste which cannot be utilized gainfully should go to a proper landfill, which has to be sanitary landfill or engineered landfill. Now, let's discuss about reduce, reuse, and recycle, which are the the main points of the 3R. Now, all of us know, in India particularly, traditionally our society valued thrift. And across the world, many societies in the earlier days, they valued thrift. But in the modern context, waste generation is linked to consumption, which again is linked to economic activity. Hence, steps for reduction in consumption may have complex ramifications. We must think about it. We just cannot say reduce. Now, reduce means immediately, particularly for a large population, it's going to have an impact on the economy. Now, what is practical and what is possible? In my opinion, and what I think is reduction in the ultimate waste, meaning maximize the processing and recycling. But I mean, we are talking about solid waste here. So processing and recycling of solid waste so that the final residue to be deposited in a sanitary landfill is minimal. It's minimal. So the land footprint is minimized. Wastage of land is minimized. And it's a common fact that most of our ULBs, urban local bodies, are really struggling for arranging land for waste management. And I've been seeing it for as many years. Across the country, I have seen this. Of course, there is another issue here because we don't have, any place for waste management in our land use plan. Look at the state land use plan or a city land use plan. Except one or two cities, I have not seen it to have been done in a proper manner. So land use plan again is very important. Now, let's come to another issue, which is very important for 3R. It's about segregation at source. But here, I have a dilemma. Now, what's it? Segregation at source is the single most important step. All of you will agree. Single most important step for efficient solid waste management. But in reality, it's not easy. And in most of the tenders that we see here in India, the ULBs propose a graded approach, say 20 to 30% segregation at source in the first year of concession agreement, which should go up incrementally by, let's say, 10 to 20% in the subsequent years, till at least 80% is reached by the end of 8-10 years. Now, I have a big problem there. If I design a processing facility for 100 to 500 TPD MSW, which I have done actually for many, many years after my retirement from HUDCO, I was with a private waste management company for 11 long years as their chief technical officer, and this was my duty. So if I have to design a processing facility for 100 to 500 TPD municipal solid waste, should I design with 20% or 80% segregation? You would agree that there is substantial difference in the design of a processing plant for segregated waste and for unsegregated waste. This is completely different because segregation itself takes a lot of additional area, additional site land. The process flow is different, the equipment and machinery is different, requirement of land is different, water, electricity, and even skill set requirement. They are all different for segregated waste and unsegregated waste Processing. Another notable issue is product quality. Composting is very familiar here and very popular here in India because waste to energy is highly capital intensive and we are still struggling with it for different reasons, including a lot of negative observation about it. Now, suppose composting is the processing method that we are considering. In the case of mixed waste, this is my practical experience. Achieving the mandatory FCO 2009 quality, which is mandatory, it's very difficult. And the yield is hardly 10%. It can be 7-8%. At the most, it would be 11 or 12%. So where is the economy? Where is the financial sustainability and viability of the process? So financial sustainability of the particular plant would be jeopardized. If, along with composting, we are doing RDF also. RDF is refuse derived fuel, which is lately being accepted by the cement plants, but of a certain quality. I had the opportunity of chairing a committee which the government of India had set up for making a guideline of this on the RDF. And we actually prepared standards for RDF, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and the combustible, segregated combustible fraction, SCF. Now, when we had detailed discussions with both waste management industries and the cement industries said that they would be happy to take grade 1 and grade 2 only, but not grade 3, and certainly not SCF. They can take those things, but only on payment, or grade 3 without any payment, right? So if the RDF is being made along with composting, achieving grade 1, grade 2 would be very difficult from mixed waste, resulting in poor acceptability and poor price from cement plants. Now, again, if we are having 20% segregation or 80% segregation, our design, just like compost plant, for the RDF plant also, the design would have definitely a lot of difference with the grade of segregation. And the problem is, if I design it today for 20% segregation, tomorrow, or let's say after 7-8 years when 80% or 90% segregation is achieved, a lot of my plant would be underutilized, which means a lot of, underuse of the capital which has been put in. It's not moving. Yeah. Yes. Now let's think about reuse and recycling possibilities. Now, what in my practical waste management life, what I found actually is that construction and demolition waste, or C&D waste in short, this offers a great potential for reuse and recycle. And this also is almost about 1/3 of the total waste. This is not small one. And actually, if it is not properly handled and properly segregated at source, this is going to kind of contaminate our biological waste or our biodegradable waste. Composting would be very difficult, or the quality would be bad. Now, in the first pilot plant, which we had done here in Delhi, it was 500 TPD, set up in India for commercial application at Burari. It was in Delhi. It was proved after about 6 years of hard labor with R&D, application, upscaling, and actual operation. We scaled up to 2,000 tons per day capacity. And it was possible to have commercially operated facility. We found it commercially viable. So reuse and recycle possibilities are very much there in C&D waste. Of course, the endeavor included marketing because it was not there earlier. Detailed rules, which were again modified, separate set of rules were brought out by the government in the year 2016. And finally, the modification of the IS standard The code was modified 381 to include processed construction and demolition waste. What we found was manufactured sand by what we developed as wet process. This had the maximum market potential, followed by building blocks for non-structural application. Actually, we were lucky to have more than, I think, 18 lakh blocks order from the new Supreme Court building, which was being made in those days. Now, this wet process we had developed ourselves. Nowhere in the world this is done, except in Japan. There is some processes for making uh, manufactured sand by wet process, but we did it for construction and demolition waste, construction and demolition debris. This was a big challenge, but of course, very, very satisfying at the end of all that. Now let's talk about the example of plastic waste. At this point of time, plastic has made deep inroads into our lives, and it is most practical to weed out, and it's not practical to weed out plastics and plastic waste. And my previous speaker also, and even previous to that, all the speakers have spoken about the desirability of moving out the plastic waste from the environment, from our ecosystem. There has been steady efforts to reduce single-use plastics, including increasing the statutory minimum thickness. Fortunately or unfortunately, I was in many of those committees, as Dr. Singh mentioned. It's such a difficult experience, But here is my punch. What about the cling wrap, whose thickness is about 12 to 13 micrometer? In India, it's even 10 micrometer. And a lot of it is discarded. Where does it go? What do you do with it? How can you not use it? Now, what do we need? We need two approaches. Number one, utilizing the plastic waste, such as for blacktop road making or for processing into liquid fuels. Now, these are two low-hanging fruits, particularly the first one. Why can't we use all these plastics in the blacktop road across the country, particularly start with the rural roads? This is a really, really low-hanging fruit. And then processing into liquid fuel, of course, has different ramification again about scale, marketing, taxation, and so on. But still, it can be done. It can be done at different scales of operation. The second one is long-term, in-depth R&D to find out better materials to replace plastics, which are more user-friendly, and better material which can replace plastic packaging material. Otherwise, it's not going to go away with our wishing it away. Definitely not. Now, 3R and zero waste. A lot has been already spoken about it. So we are not really, I'm not going to really go into depth, but in short, even personally, I asked this question many times and in many meetings. What do we understand by zero waste? Is it actually possible? In practice, it means what? In my opinion, it means minimizing the ultimate waste. Maybe you can minimize it to 10%, 15%. 15% may be a comfortable figure. Going down to 10% may be the ideal, but it's very, very difficult. Now, with application of 3R, the steps leading to minimizing the ultimate waste is facilitated, definitely, no doubt about it. Now, implementation and practice of the principles helps to achieve sustainability. Most of the speakers have spoken about this, so I'm not going in detail about this. As mentioned earlier, to my mind, land is the most important determinant for waste management. And most of the ULBs are actually struggling for it. And land is something which we just can't fritter away with. On the other hand, natural resources are finite. And that is why what we spoke about for C&D waste, it has to be utilized. It has to be reused. The example of building materials has been mentioned in the context of reuse and recycling of C&D waste. And you see, we had actually when we worked on it on the IS 381 at BIS, we agreed that to start with, for the coming years, let us do with non-structural elements. And in our constructions, almost 50% is non-structural elements. And there is immense scope of utilizing it. There is a question somewhere which has been put up as to how much this can be used for bringing in the circular economy in making our buildings in the construction segment. Well, I think at this point of time, about 1/3 building materials can be supplied through properly managed C&D waste facilities. But unfortunately, we had to limit it to 10% or some places even 2% when we were writing the rules, because there are no precedences, there are no examples, but it can definitely be done up to 1/3. I think this is my last slide. Practically, what is possible? Well, today is 5th June, World Environment Day. Today we should think that the planet is ours and we must take care of the long-term interests of the planet, its environment, its ecosystem. We need to deliberate on practical ways of doing these activities in line with principles of 3R. I'll flag it again. We need to deliberate on practical ways of doing this. Now, the difficulties with each and every aspects must be kept in view. Each and every aspect. See, as I just mentioned initially, that I have been into this for 11 years on the ground. And I know the pains and pleasures of the daily pains and pleasures of going through these things. The ULBs and other public authorities must understand the same things. The implications of the tenders they prepare, and they must be practical in bringing out the tenders when they make it. Otherwise, same or similar facilities are actually being repeatedly installed, which is a wastage of public money. In my long life with waste management, I have seen same facilities coming up in the city, in many cities. I won't name the cities, but one after the other, in waves of introduction, same things have been introduced again and again and again. All stakeholders must come together to deliberate and plan in an interactive manner to save our environment and our economy. I think that's the last of it. Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Majumdar. So nice, actually. And I think you really, I would say that raised the issues that we really need to discuss and save our planet, if I may say so. Thank you so much indeed, right? Okay, my dear friends, we are, I would say that having a very important part of our webinar still left out. We have a panel of very 5 distinguished persons actually, and we have some few questions that we will like to present. I'll just like to quickly introduce our panelists. First one is Mr. Sumesh Sharma. He is an expert environment and sustainable development planning from the Institute for Housing and Urban Development Studies, Erasmus University, Rotterdam, the Netherlands. We also, Sumesh is basically a team member of the Urban Environment and Climate Change thematic area at IHS, and he is involved all in teaching, research, advisory, and also designing tailor-made training programs. Then we have Dr. Harpreet Kandra, Federation University, Australia. He also is an adjunct professor in one of the Indian universities, Chitkara University. I think, you know, he of course did his PhD in Australia itself, and then perhaps I think, you know, but one of his key area is again on wastewater treatment, on which he worked. Then we also have next speaker, next panelist is Dr. Deepti Jain. She is Assistant Professor, Department of Energy and Environment, Terry School of Advanced Studies. And as a matter of fact, she is also particularly teaching transportation subject as a matter of fact. We have Girish Chadda. Girish Chadda is an editor and publisher, and actually India Water Review is brought out by him in New Delhi, India. He has just come up with a book published by Springer in on water, basically from Singapore. And then we have Mr. Rajiv Sharma, General Manager from Housing and Urban Development Corporation. He, as a matter of fact, largely presently is working in the Core Infrastructure Strategic Business Unit of Housing and Urban Development Corporation. And of course, has also been teaching and training in the research and training wing of HUDCO, which is called HSMI, Human Settlement Management Institute. My dear friends, I have some set of questions which I shared with you earlier on. We'd like to put them on the screen, and I would like that, we'll take up one by one those questions, and perhaps I think, we will like to have your views on that so that we are very clear. We also have Dr. Gopal Krishan, Professor Emeritus, Department of Geography from Punjab University, Chandigarh. And then we also have Dr. S.L. Sharma. Dr. S.L. Sharma is a former professor and head Department of Sociology, Punjab University, Chandigarh. Then we also have, as a matter of fact, would you like to take up the next slide? We have another couple of distinguished panelists on that. And I would like to say that we just try to take up those questions. The first question that, as a matter of fact, we are having is basically the impact. What impact would a strategic shift have to the circular economy in terms of clean water, clean land, and clean air? Basically, are we able to display those questions on the screen, or I should really present them? Surjit ji?
Sir, present kar do.
Okay, we don't have it on the screen?
We have some technical problem.
Okay, all right. Now I think we are taking up the first question, impact. What would a strategic shift have to the circular economy in terms of clean water, clean land, and clean air? May I invite Sumesh Sharma from IHS Rotterdam for his brief comments and views on that.
Dr. Kulvanji, thank you very much, first of all, inviting me to this wonderful event. Before I share my views on this question, I would like to pass on my compliments to all the speakers, and I really enjoyed listening to their ideas. I do have some views on this question. Before I start discussing with you and presenting my views, sharing my views with the others, I want to make sure that with this question, you want us to discuss that if we plan to strategically shift towards circular economy, what kind of impacts we can expect on clean land, air, and water. Right. Is that correct, Kulvanji?
That's right. That's very right.
Well, it's a very, very interesting question. And I actually keep thinking about it always. India is in my every drop of blood, so always stays on my mind. I was thinking on this question that I do believe a lot in circular economy concept. I'm pretty much in favor of this school of thought that we should really move strategically towards circular economy. When I like to connect it with our clean environment, which is land, air, and water, as you are asking us to present our views on, I think the shift to circular economy would rather have, in a way, limited effect on clean air, water, and environment, why limited and what do I mean by limited? By limited, I do not mean that circular economy is not effective in us making a clean environment. By limited, I mean it is context dependent. Why I think so, I don't know, but this is just my own personal way of thinking. I think about the limitations of circular economy approach in achieving clean environment, because what circular economy, in relevance of this question, how I see circular economy from my perspective. One, it's a change in our behavior, which I really like. We need to change it. Two, a change in behavior that leads to reducing the disposal of waste. Now, here is the catch, which makes me feel about the limited effectiveness of circular economy in cleaning environment, because disposal is not a problem worldwide, but disposal is a serious problem in several geographies. Like if I remember, Mr. Kakkar was presenting the lack of sanitation infrastructure in the country. So wherever it's simple, very, very simple mathematics, plus and minus. Wherever we have large populations, which is our Asia, so we do expect a lot of waste is produced because of our current consumption and production patterns. But then we do not have enough infrastructure to simply absorb the waste produced. Now, that surplus, where does that go? That goes into the ponds, that goes into the open land, etc. So it's as simple as that, which means to explain or clarify my view of limited role of circular economy in clean environment. It is limited not because it is less effective, it is very effective, but it is limited to those particular locations where the context is typically lack of infrastructure and high production of waste. So there, if we change our behaviors, reduce the waste, we would definitely achieve clean environment. So that's what I would like to say from my side, in specific, in short, in objective terms. But I do believe I am also a man of action, and I keep my approach as outcomes oriented. If I'm doing something for environmental management in Asia context, my first choice of a strategy would be starting from circular economy, because it will not only help in cleaning the environment, it will bring in a lot of co-benefits. And one more point I would like to add on where I would see the circular economy is giving us desired results. I think most in terms of cleaning what is. Second is the land, and relatively lesser impact on air quality, because the logic is very simple. It's the waste which is not being taken care of and is openly disposed. The first victims, I'm based now in city of Ahmedabad. I'm from Jalandhar city. Ahmedabad has 464 ponds, all dried up, and most of them are, well, not really dumping grounds, but vulnerable too. So I would say the water will be the first sector where we would see the positive effects of circular economy in terms of cleaning environment. Second will be the land. Yeah, because water also flows, so it goes longer and land remains really local. And the third will be the air. That's all what I would like to add from my side, but I really welcome.
Thank you, Somesh. We'll get back. I think I'd like to take up the second question, which is mainly saying that currently water scarcity affects more than 40% of the world population, with almost 2 billion people drinking contaminated water. May I invite Dr. Harpreet Kandra basically for his observations and comments. Water shortages, as you know, are going to affect about 5 billion people by 2050, as per UN estimates. What are the possible impacts a shift to the circular economy would have on our sustainable development goal number 6, relating to water and sanitation?
Thank you, Dr. Singh. I've been making notes all last 2 hours. Coming to this interesting question on the circular economy and its relation to water scarcity, I personally feel, given the fact that circular economy is something around collecting data, establishing a baseline, understanding where we are, re-looking at whether we should be consuming 135 liters of water per person per day as per the Indian standards. I think circular economy helps you rethink about the fact that what gets measured gets managed. And as of now, we do not know where we are. Most of us know, and most of our communities would know how much we are spending on petrol to run a car every week or every month, but we do not know how much water we are using. We also do understand the fact that water use efficiency is not understood properly. So if you are talking about circular economy, and if we do not know, what is being used, how it is being used, how much is the non-revenue water, we cannot actually make much progress. The value of water is not understood because the costs are abysmally low. If you talk about what we pay per liter or per kiloliter of water that we consume, especially in the Indian conditions. Think about the polluter pays principle, which is applied to industries, but it is not applied to the wastewater that is generated from households. We talk about environmental features like wetlands, which are treating the city's waste and stormwater, but we are not sure whether they are working or not. So in some ways, circular economy can play a big role in the processes of sustainable consumption. And if some of us start consuming water in a sustainable way, obviously, we will have more water resources to share with the other communities who do not have access to water. Now, there's another interesting aspect here, which is called fit for purpose water use. And if you want to look at the 135 liters of water that we should be consuming in our houses in India, you will see that out of that 135 liters, only 30 or 40 liters of water needs to be really of a very good quality. You do not need a very good quality of water to flush your toilets. You do not need a very good quality of water to wash your clothes. You do not need a very good quality of water to wash our cars. And in polluted cities of India, we need to clean and wash our cars on a regular basis, which might take about 10 to 20 liters of water. We do not need a very good quality of water to water our gardens.
Arpit, my key question is also whether we shall be able to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 6 for ensuring availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. I think in the keynote address, I think Professor Biswas raised the issue of changing our norms from, let us say, from, as he said, from 135 liter. Do we really need it? I mean, that's one of the key questions that we are really having it. Achieving Sustainable Development Goal 6.
That's the key point where I am coming to. If we relook at what we are consuming, and if you look at people who are consuming resources sustainably, if I look at my water bill here in Melbourne, I consume about 70 liters of water per person per day. So why should we be consuming 135 liters of water per person per day in India? And if we can consume 70 liters of water per person per day, we can actually feed one more person with that water, and that water scarcity will start coming down. If I start using alternative sources of water supply, like wastewater, like rainwater, like storm water, we will actually be able to use less water, and we will actually be able to generate more water uses that can be used by other people. So certainly, looking at where we are, and by applying principles of systems thinking using circular economy approaches, I think, I don't see why we should not be able to meet the SDG 6 target. And I also wanted to bring to your kind attention that, the SDG 12 goal, if you look at, which talks about sustainable consumption, it's clearly linked to SDG 6 goal as well.
Right. Thank you so much indeed. Yes, please. Kindly.
Yeah, thank you. Coming more pertinently to the question that you raised, that what are the possible impacts the shift to the circular economy would have on the SDG 6. Now, the point is, we are almost across the world suffering with both the quantity of water as well as the quality of water. Okay? And I personally believe that both these issues are going to be addressed if we are looking at the circular economy way of basically sustainable development around water. We've actually moved beyond the 3 hours now to 4 hours and 6 hours, which talk about even reclamation and then restoration and everything and all. And maybe later on, I would bring about a slightly interesting, industrial perspective that was touched upon by a couple of presenters earlier, in which in water in India, of course, we are having a lot of work now in what we call the zero liquid discharge facilities, which are there in fact. And let me also remind you that, the 135 LPCD as, the benchmark that the Indian government is looking at, we could probably be quite close to it because we are only looking at, as Dr. Harpreet said, in fact, that, 70 liters per day. But that's basically the direct consumption of water. We are not looking at the total water footprint that each one of us has, in fact, directly and indirectly. So we need to create a balance. The balance is to be restored more in certain geographies, including in India, than perhaps in certain geographies where you already have a lot of water management and water governance issues are quite set, and they're not issues in all in fact. So that's my bit for now. I'll come back to it later as we progress. Thank you.
No, thank you so much indeed, Giri. We'll take up the next. Yes, sir. Please.
Can I just put in one line there?
Kindly, please.
I was just after Mr. Harpreet had just raised this point about 70 liters, so that appeared to be very interesting from the government perspective, because we are also looking at examples worldwide where mature cities are using less water than what we have on our that 135 liters as per our policy. That's not actually a rule. Basically, it's a policy. At a certain time in past, somebody decided, a group of experts, that this needs to be the amount of water which should be supplied if we want to develop flushable cities. That is, there are cities which could have a non-sewer system which can work on 70, but in case we want a flushable system, because the entire sewer network design also depends on what is the quantity of water coming into a sewer, otherwise the sewers are also not work. So when this figure just came up, so I looked at the internet. So even Victoria and the Melbourne ka bhi a norm hai, Mr. Harpreet, it comes to 155 liters. I was just looking at the government of Victoria's this thing. So is it by choice that you're using 70 liters? Definitely by choice. If a person uses less water, तो यहाँ पे भी choice कर लें या force कर लें. But as a norm, can a city design its network of sewerage on 70 liters? That's what I just wanted to know. That doubt all.
Rohit ji, there's a Victorian government guideline which says that you should be consuming a maximum of 155 liters of water per person per day. But when you construct houses these days, their council regulations require you to have a rainwater tank in your house. And if you put a rainwater tank which is harvesting water, you will bring down your water consumption by about 30%. On top of that, all people are encouraged to replace their inefficient showers with showers, and you will be astonished to know that out of the 155 liters that we consume here, about 50 liters is consumed only under the shower, because people enjoy long showers, 2 showers a day maybe, and every minute that is spent beneath the shower could take about 8 to 10 liters of water.
I'm totally with you. That should be done. I'm supporting your view. My only worry was that because the design of the sewer network जो होगा Melbourne का, they would have designed on that everybody's contributing around 80% of that 155 liter, which is 120. Then the sewer network will start failing. वो एक बहुत बड़ा फिकर रहता है जो designer होता है sitting at my position when I say reduce water usage. तो मुझे ये भी देखना पड़ता है alternate मुझे जो दूसरे point पे sewer में मेरा problem आ जाएगा, उसको मैं कैसे अब sort out करूँ? If my sewers were designed for 70 liters, then definitely the slopes will have to be more. Then I'll have to give some additional water flushing system. So many other things are there. तो वो एक element है. Though I'm totally with you that we should use less water, and like all the speakers saying, in case norms can be revised, we are willing for looking at fresh norms, because we also feel that 135 liter actually use hota nahi. As a human being, I don't use actually 135 liters in my own this thing. लेकिन वो जो डिजाइन पैरामीटर है उसमें एक थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम आ रहा है, इसलिए मुझे थोड़ा
when you talk about sewers, you need to have a minimum cleansing velocity of 0.7 meters per second, which is easily met with reduced flow rates if the consumption has gone down. And that's one part of it. The other part of it is obviously that, you know, our current challenge currently is that, you know, we are working on recycling the water a lot, but we are looking for users who can use the recycled water on a daily basis. So the current impetus has actually gone on from a 3-pipe system to a 4-pipe system. So one pipe is the potable supply, the other pipe is the wastewater pipeline, the third is the stormwater pipeline that goes out of my house, and the fourth one, a purple colored pipeline, is going to bring recycled water into my house so that I can use it in my toilets and for my gardening and other things as well.
So it's a very important issue which I think our cities and towns have to really learn. The best example which was given in the morning by our, you know, keynote speaker was from Singapore, where, for example, every drop that falls on Singapore from the sky is harvested, number one. Number two, I would say that 90% of the wastewater is recycled. And interestingly, what we learned was that after recycling and treatment, some of it also goes even for the normal water supply, for that matter. So I think these are the things that we have to learn. We also have to look at our norms in India. But by the way, in our 4,000 plus cities and towns, there are not large number of cities where we have, for example, the sewerage system. What we have done today are also single pit, twin pit kinds of latrines by providing, where perhaps I do not think we need that quantity of water. We have to look at our design systems, we have to look at our norms, and therefore plan the things accordingly. I think, allow me, I think we move on to the next question, basically that, if you permit me, basically, there is a nexus between 3R clean water and water security naturally encompasses a number of line ministries and agencies, including city and local authorities. What kind of horizontal and vertical cooperation the countries should effectively consider in implementing 3R and circular economy development strategies in this regard? We need a cooperation also among these, not just among the cities or states, but we also need cooperation, for that matter, among the countries also in the region. Are you able to comment something on that? Harpreet, would you like to comment on?
Sir, I would not be the right person to talk about this in context of India, but I will pass it on to some other experts on the panel.
Right. Okay.
Maybe just one short insight over here. Now we have started, we have developed methods where we can account for what individual, as an individual user, has an impact on the environment in terms of specifically emissions or ecological footprint. But in India, or I don't think so, that kind of an approach has been adopted widely, but has been discussed widely in research is what about footprinting the water consumption by the individuals? Whether the individuals know how much they're consuming and how much waste is being generated. And that is something where, every city should, can implement a strategy wherein, some kind of an reward, incentive kind of a system can be provided such that the water consumption overall reduces and there is a reconsumption or consumption of the recycled water. Another point that I shall raise over here is also that smart cities ranking and Swachh Bharat ranking has, been one of the most, you can say, widely accepted scheme, and that has benefited a lot of the cities. We can have similar kind of an approach for city ranking in terms of the cities who reduce their overall water consumption and improve their water management systems. So utilizing the approach of SLBs, the service level benchmarks, and advancing it further, that can really help ranking the cities, and therefore, and a progressive approach by the cities to adopt a system, adopt a method, a management system that can help reduce the overall consumption and improvise on the wastewater recycling and management.
Kulwanji, sorry, if I may add a little bit to the question here.
Quick question, quick.
The coordination between different levels of government, I tend to agree with Deepti on one point at the local level. I think in my understanding, for bringing or the culture of circular economy, for me it's a culture of circular economy. There isn't much dependence in Indian context, isn't much dependent required on higher levels of governments. In my opinion, it's really a local level action. There are already provisions. We are quite decentralized. We are federal. It's about gathering the local resources, and in our huge country, the context is very different. I don't think the solutions which apply to J&K are equally applicable to in Kerala or Gujarat. So it's really a local level action, and I think there is fairly a good amount of freedom for the local governments to act. So I would think of not much intervention in terms of coordination is required. It exists. We just need to mobilize it.
It's also a question of, Somesh, some kind of, for example, we have a system of policies that get framed from a national level. Then ultimately it goes to the second level, which is the state level. Implementation is at a local level. So there is a kind of vertical kind of cooperation of that kind is also required.
Yeah,
and
no,
then,
I agree. Yeah, I agree with you, Kulwanji, because that's our system, that central government is preparing a program and other agencies just implement. But I really believe we need to come out of it, because everything we need to make a change with.
There we need to strengthen our local government in a big way.
We shouldn't be waiting for the central government say, now this is a program for everything is a new program. Local governments can become smarter now, I think. So, but I agree with you that there is definitely a sort of initiation and a guidance from the higher levels of governments, but still the action at the local level would be very effective. But of course, I get your point that if there is some kind of umbrella or policy where it has been made as more valid initiative, so it will encourage, motivate, and provide more enabling environment to the local governments. But I still see the action is at local level.
Yeah, well, that is true. Implementation is always at a local level, but you need policies, you need sometimes institutional supports. Sometimes you also need financial supports coming from above. Yeah. Okay. May I like to? Yeah, please.
Maybe just maybe some addition over here, and maybe it may be related to few more other upcoming or already addressed questions. I always relate every problem in the urban sector is related to other problems in the urban sector. So when we talk about this water management per se, then I can easily link it with the transportation sector. And if I look at the individuals' needs for the water, and especially if we talk about whether it's Rajasthan or in rural India, then we know that how individuals need to travel to fetch the basic quantity of water that they or their family requires. Now that is one. Another question that comes up is that because we do not have water management system appropriately placed, not only we lose water while transporting it from one location to another, but also we add to the crisis of transportation per se when the water is being transported using water tanks. And this is, one of the biggest challenge that has come up in the recent times. And I don't know why our governments are still not able to find solutions to it, where we already know that the solutions exist. So I think it's about breaking that norm, breaking what has been practiced till date to really fetch the solution. So like what Somesha said, that local actions are mostly required rather than a global approach or a national approach, because yes, every city has a different requirement, and the problems and issues and challenges are also very different. Yeah.
That is true, Dipti. Yes, customized approaches are needed at a local level. There is no doubt about it. But I would like to mention very particularly that present government has come up with this flagship program of providing piped water supply to every household. I think by 2024, basically that. And the work is in progress, very particularly in the rural areas. So I would like to say that yes, things are there happening, though gradually, and the problems are also there. We have to really address them accordingly. And some of the answers do come, let us say, also from these platforms that we have, like the UNCRD's platform on the ESP, in this 3R and Circular Economy Forum, which they organize regionally for different countries. Yeah. May I invite? Yes, sir. Please. Yes, Girish.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think very interesting point. Just exactly. In fact, Somesh and I believe Preeti. In fact, interestingly, yes, Preeti. Interestingly, the answer is somewhere in the fact that constitutionally, water is a state subject in India, and also the center does not get to decide on anything, fortunately or unfortunately. The last two iterations in the national water policy, which were carried out, were not met very enthusiastically by some of the states in all, in fact. And there is always a power struggle in which, and water becomes a victim, unfortunately. But at the same time, as you said, that some of the, at the ULB level or at the state level, at the local municipal level, there is also a reluctance to adopt a certain kind of technology which is the latest, because they still go by the fact that we have to award a project to somebody based on an L1 system and all. The person who comes up with the lowest of the cost, irrespective of whether that technology has a certain a certain life cycle. In fact, it cannot solve your problem maybe 10 years, 12 years from now, when the constituents of the wastewater that you get are going to change, the quantity is going to change. So at the grassroots level, there are a lot of challenges which are there and all. Yeah. Interestingly, let me just add and then finish and all. Among the latest of the policy directives that the central government came up with was to actually say that there are 6 kind of technologies which it acknowledges are going to be good, and it would encourage the state governments to actually adopt around that and all. In fact, so there's some kind of a benchmark that it has established, which has happened for the first time. And the second part, in fact, is around the Ganga projects and all, in which there are new kinds of financial instruments which are coming in. So, I mean, as we move along, there's a lot that one can talk about, that the financial sector per se in India is moving towards maturity. But it needs a lot of persistence at the policy level, policy interventions and everything and all, to come up to a speed, for that. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. Can I take up the next question and invite Rajiv Sharma, basically? One of the questions which we really addressed, we have actually asked for is that apart from pollution and health impacts, we have open dumping and open burning of waste, which remains a major issue in the region, with adverse effects on the physical, chemical, and biological properties of the land. To what extent do you think the national and local authorities address these issues through implementation of dedicated 3R policies, programs, I would say, including infrastructure development? As you deal with the infrastructure development in HUDCO, I thought you could share some of these experiences. Is Rajiv there? Rajiv Sharma. Hello, am I audible? If not, then I would like to invite Professor Sharma, as a matter of fact, for his views on the subject and his observations on some of these questions. Professor Sharma Saab.
Which Professor Sharma?
You are there, sir, actually. Professor Sharma from Sociology Department.
All right, sir. Yeah, thank you, Kulwant ji, for your very kind calling me. See, I would like to suggest that we need to have some second thoughts about the whole idea of circular economy. I have mainly 2 points to make. Number one, that circular economy has some conceptual limits. There are limits to the concept of circularity. That is one point that I would like to make. And the other point that I would like to make is the limitations of the role of circular economy in sustainability. Let me take up the first point now. And the first point is about the concept of circular economy. The whole idea is on 3 R's. And among those 3 R's, the central one is recycling. Most of the presentations that have been made here, as well as most of the literature and discourse on it, is centered on the whole idea of recycling. Now, the problem is that there are limits to recycling. And the limits are important in terms of the fact that there are 2 kinds of matters, as we know. There are matters that are composable, decomposable, and there are matters which are not decomposable. As far as decomposable matters are concerned, we know all of them, organic and so on, they are there. But then there are certain decomposable matters like synthetic and electronic and so on and so forth. Now, the point is that circularity has its limits. Recycling has its limits as far as the second category of metals are concerned. And therefore, it is important for us to understand this point. The second related point to this, that is limits to the concept of circular economy, is the whole idea of inputs exceeding outputs. The point is that if we look at the history of mankind, particularly the last century, the 100 years of 20th century, what we have is that the use of resources has been 1400%, which actually calculated at a different level means there has been 3% of use of the material that we have. Now, on the other hand, this is indeed double the population rate. The rate of use of these resources in terms of the matters that we have has far exceeded than the rate of population growth. It is indeed double the rate of population growth. So this whole notion has limits of its own. Now, the second category, coming to my second observation, and that is about the limitations of circular economy for sustainability, the whole idea of sustainability. Now it's here that we have to understand the big picture. The big picture consists of 3 P's as against 3 R's. And these 3 P's are the planet, the people, and the production. You know, production is the process through which people get related to planet. Now, these 3 P's, the point is that the nature or the planet has provided, or it provides, as Gandhi would put it, to meet the needs of everybody, but not to meet the greed of everybody. What we have is that the production, which is the central concern of capitalism, which is the central concern of modern industrialism, which is the central concern of modern civilization and the whole modern society. Now, the point is that what for do we have the production? Do we have the production just for sustenance or consumption of everybody as much as one needs? Or are we having production in order to serve the greed of a few people, the corporate leaders, the capitalists, the industrialists? Now, the point is, the fact remains that the kind of big picture is that of larger political economy of capitalism in which we are operating. We should not lose sight of this big picture. That is my major point. And there is a need indeed for putting the 3 P's against the 3 R's, or better still, the 3 R's against the 3 P's. On the one hand, we have the 3 R's of circular economy, that is reuse and recycle and in a way reduce. These are the 3 P's of. Now, the whole stress of circular economy is on recycling, to the relative neglect of reduce or reduction. Of course, little references have been made to the whole idea of reducing the use, but the point is, who is to reduce? Is the capitalist going to reduce his greed, which drives the production process, or are the consumers going to control and resist theirs in terms of standard of living, promoting their or raising their standard of living? So neither the producer nor the consumer, both of them need to alter their ways, but neither of them is prepared to alter his or her ways. That's the ways neither the capitalists or the producers are in a position to, or are inclined to do it, nor are the people, the consumers. So the point is that what is needed is that there should be given this kind of commitment to growth. And as a matter of fact, circular economy, as I see it, is an instrument. It's a means devised by capitalism to sustain itself. That is okay. Whatever little waste management we can do, whatever little recycling we may do, let us do that so that the capitalism is sustainable. Now, this precisely is where the problem begins. My submission is that what we need is either of the two things. Either we need a kind of capitalism which is ethical capitalism, a kind of capitalism which somehow develops a culture which is an ethical culture, and which develops a sense of responsibility and sensitivity towards the people. So the producer has to be sensitive towards the people in order to make the planet adequate for the people. That is one possibility. Or the other possibility is to overthrow this whole system of capitalism and to think of an alternative system of economy if we really want to have environmental sustainability, ecological sustainability. So my submission is that I feel that the circular economy is indeed a clever device. I'm being a little outrageous. It's a clever device of the capitalist capitalists to self-serve their own purpose. As a matter of fact, the whole idea of circular economy is a contradiction in terms. It's self-contradictory. Why do we need circular economy? So that the growth, the development, but by growth, we mean the production, the mass production and its sale, the market. The growth goes on. Now, environment is finite. It has its limits. It can't serve the interests of infinite aspiration or consumption. And therefore, this contradiction is important. It's important to understand this contradiction. To conclude, I would only like to submit that the purpose of by making this observation is not to underestimate or slide down the importance of circular economy. In fact, I wholeheartedly endorse all the discussions and the ways in which certain, but at the same time, I endorse it. It's a noble cause, particularly in view of the fact that something is better than nothing. I mean, we cannot just let the environment get degraded without doing anything. So doing something is better than nothing. For that purpose, circular economy is a good thing. It's an excellent idea, but at the same time, it has to be noted that recycling and reuse alone are not enough for sustainability. They are not enough for sustainable development. There are many more dimensions of sustainable development, including this whole dimension of political economy. Unless we reckon with that, too much reliance or over-reliance on circular economy won't do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharma Sahab. I think good. We all realize there are limitations of circular economy, but the circular economy approach basically highlights the need for a kind of economy, which represents a model which is more resilient, diverse, and inclusive. Basically that. If you permit, Jaswant Singh ji, could I just invite Professor Gopal Krishan for his observations for a couple of minutes?
Sure, sir. Sure.
Professor Gopal Krishan. गोपाल कृष्ण जी, आपको मेरी आवाज आ रही है कि नहीं?
He has left.
If he has left, then I will like to request Mr. Jaswant Singh ji, Senior Vice President, Institute for Spatial Planning and Environment Research, for giving a vote of thanks. We'd like to conclude it. We have already overshot the time by almost like an hour. And I would like to sort of, request him for a vote of thanks.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir.
Audible.
Ji.
Kind of discussion it was going on. It's similar to stop this kind of discussion. It was going at a higher plane and higher level. So but we have limitations of our time. We have allotted time, and we already overshot by 1 hour. So we have to conclude it. I have to be asked to say thanks to everybody.
Your voice is not very clear. Your voice is not very clear.
First of all, I'll start with the key speakers. Professor Asit K. Biswas from Glasgow University, UK. His he set the ball rolling by questioning the parameters devised by the public health authorities for 130 LPCD water requirement for each individual. And then we had further, it was expanded by Dr. Anupam Khajuria from UNCRD, Japan, Professor Sunil Herat, School of Engineering and Built Environment, Griffith University. I'm being short, I'm not detailing on everybody because we are really short of time. Mr. Rohit Kakkad, Deputy Advisor, CPHEO, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Then Professor Ashmi Luthra, Professor Ms. Ratna Bora, and Dr. N.B. Majumdar. The panelists, we had two kind of approaches this time. One was the key speakers and keynote addresses by certain very high level of intellectuals and practitioners in 3R economy, circular economy, and in 3R. Then with the panelists, these included Mr. Sumesh Sharma, Harpreet S. Kandra, Dr. Deepti Jain, and Girish Chadda. Mr. Rajiv Sharma couldn't join. Professor S.L. Sharma from Punjab University. So very high level of discussion, and they have really contextualized the presentations made by the keynote speakers. And the Institute of Spatial Planners and Spatial Planning and Environment Research really say our gratitude to all these speakers and panelists. Our thanks are due to UNCRD, United Nations Center for Regional Development, 3R Waste, All India Institute of Local Self-Government, our partners in this program. Our thanks are also due to our president, Dr. Kulwant Singh, who has, shown his imprint after joining in April, and the level of speakers he has, gathered for this this Environment Day webinar is it itself indicates the things to come in his presidency, and we expect much more from him in the time to come in arranging resources for discussions and arranging webinars or seminars, whatever will be possible. Thank you very much, Dr. Singh. My thanks are also due to our Sujit Singh for arranging all the logistics, our Secretary General, and the staff of ISPER. There were really initial hiccups in having the connection proper. Then we had to shift on a different platform from Google to Zoom, but we were able to do it in a very short time. So thanks to the ISPER staff and technicians who are able to do it. So we now close the session by saying thank you everyone, all the participants also, those who registered. I think more than 240 people, 250 people registered for this webinar, and very high level of presence. And presently also I can see that around 60 to 70 people are still listening to this discussion. So our thanks are due to all these participants also in the webinar. Thank you very much. So we close this session now. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Just one apology from ISPER side. Since this event was organized on Google Meet for unlimited numbers, but due to technological limitations from Google Meet, we had to shift to Zoom with the limited number of 100. But we had the registration exceeding more than 250. My apologies to all those who registered with us but could not join due to the limited number allowed by Zoom. The next time we will see that these things do not happen. So thank you very much to all the participants, those who registered with us and those who spoke very well to make this event a successful event. And thanks to UNRSB Japan.
We shall circulate the recorded version to all the registered participants. So what I'm saying is, Sujit Singh ji, can you hear me? I am saying that we shall circulate the recorded version to all the registered participants.
We will do it.
Thank you so much indeed. Right. Thank you very much. Thanks everybody. All the best.